Hello, and welcome to the Spooky Chris podcast. My name is Chris Ringler, and I welcome you. I'm excited today to present a conversation with author John R. Carlos. He is the author of the Cryonic Dreams trilogy. The first book, Awakening, is out now, and it's first part of a trilogy he has. It's a sci-fi kind of thriller that will be releasing the next few years. Like I say, Awakening is out. The second book in the trilogy, When Mars Breaks, is set to release in 2026. And the final book, Martian Revelations, is set to release in about 3 years. I invite you to come along and listen to this great conversation. You can check out all of his stuff if you want to track him down. I'll say the stuff at the end as well. HTTPS colon / johnrcarlos.com.au. So come with me for a great conversation.
Chris, thanks for having me on your show,
It is.
the
It is.
Spooky Chris podcast.
It's an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. So yeah. I'll just dive right in here because there's a lot to talk about.
Yep.
When did you first kind of fall in love with storytelling?
Well, it's something I've always wanted to do, but uh, work always just got in the way. So it really, um, I didn't really have the opportunity until after I retired, which is when I dove into it. Um, so it's been a quite a little journey actually since my retirement. I think I'm busier now than when I was actually working.
That's
Between
wonderful.
doing a couple of courses because storytelling, creative writing is so different to business writing, which is what I was used to. It's a whole mindset shift. So I decided I'd do a course just to get my head around things, and and I started writing almost straight away the story, and so it's been an experience which I've really enjoyed actually, but it's taken a little while. But here we are.
Oh, it's fantastic. I know I do communications work, so I know how different it is creative to like kind of writing for a more serious audience. How has that transition been for you if you're doing business writing and stuff to then go to a more creative side?
Well, how can I say it? Like I said, it's a complete mindset change, right? Because um, with business writing, it's all about yeah, conciseness and getting to the point quickly and all that sort of business jargon. But with creativity, it's about exploring and being able to uh, bring together not only just a world, but at the same time um, describing an event or a scene, a character's emotion. So it's just completely different, and which is why I decided I I needed to do a course just to fully appreciate myself and immerse myself in the creative side. I feel I've always been, despite my military background, I feel I've always had a creative bent, and uh, but I've never really been able to fully explore it. So when I retired, that's exactly what I did. And like I said, it's been a bit of a journey, and that change between writing for business and creative writing. But I'm glad I did. It's great.
Wonderful. Now before we really get deep dive into the books, this is like pretty deep sci-fi thriller territory. Were those the kind of books you were reading when, for pleasure and or when you're younger or anything?
Uh, yeah, to some degree. I've always been a bit of a sci-fi fan, and a bit of a thriller. I do watch a lot of crime shows, and I wanted to create something that captured both genres. And what I did when I set out, because I had the kernel of an idea, and that came from a bad dream, believe it or not. It was um, I don't know what my subconscious was going through at the time, but it was I had this bad dream, a woman waking up in out of a stasis chamber and stepping out across this dark floor and hands coming up and grabbing. At some point in my imagination, I actually swapped places with her, and I was the one walking through this
Oh,
dark room.
wow.
And the hands were coming out from the floor and saying, "You don't belong. You don't belong." So, and that was from that moment on. I thought, "Oh, this has got to be, you know, in a story somewhere that I write." And I did. I used that as, and I think that was a bit of a unique element to Cryonic Dreams. It's because even though the main character is the doctor that revives the patient, the whole story revolves around the patient's background, her history, and what she brings into the future. So, uh, yeah, I'd like to think it's a bit unique for a dystopian novel.
Absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely. Now, like you have the first book out. Awakening is out right now. Yes.
yes.
Have you started kind of plotting out the next two or working on them yet? Or
The second one's almost done because, believe it or not, Awakening and the second book were one story when I started writing
oh,
it.
okay.
But there was just too much story to tell. And in discussion with my editor, when I put the my draft to her, she said, "There's a lot of information here." And I said, "Well, I've been contemplating whether it should be two books." She said, "Make it two books." And so I did. And so I've got most of the second book already written. It's just I've got to make, because I've made changes to the first part now to make it into that, turn it into the book, Awakening. I have to again go through what I've got so far, and then I've got to add some chapters to weave into. I've got to write about 5 or 6 new chapters to weave into the storyline. So, which takes place predominantly on Mars, the second book. As for the third book, it's obviously crucial to the trilogy because it's the finale, and it brings everything together, everything from part one and part two. It ties in the history because the character that is reanimated or resurrected, if you like, she's actually from yours and my timeline. Um, so what's happening today is what affecting her when she wakes up. So uh, and I can go into it if you like about how I actually created the world that they're both in.
Yeah, absolutely. You had sent me all like just a wealth of information, and it's fascinating how much uh, just thought and work you put into creating like a timeline and a history, and language for this whole series. I mean,
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. Well, thank you, but it was a lot of work because when I started the story in my mind always started with the doctor waking up the patient, right? And it sort of still does, but there is a preceding chapter now. But I was thinking, what is the history of this world that she wakes up in, and what is the deal of her past? So what I started to, I really took a strategic sort of look at our world, at our geopolitics, and a lot of the problems that we're facing. And the first thing I did was create a mind map. And if you go onto my website, you'll actually see it. It's I think I've called it mind mapping the human condition. So it's a whole bunch of causal variables that have affected humanity throughout history. So I used that. Then I looked at um, the a lot of trending technologies and what's coming our way and what's occurring, and I created what I call the key variables of causation. Um, and in that, I extrapolate things from the variables from the mind map and consolidate them into um, different, I suppose, fields, if you like, of effect, of causation. And again, these are on my website, so you can actually go and have a look at it. And from that is how I created the timeline. So the timeline falls out of the key variables and the mind map. And so the timeline is based on everything that's happening in the world today, funneled through this hypothetical series of causal events, causal variables. So that's how I came to create the history behind the the future of cryonic dreams.
Yeah, it really is just breathtaking because very few writers take that the kind of time you did to build that out. And I imagine that that's it's all probably in the books, but not spelled out in those terms. So that really is like just a whole ton more work you did just to kind of dive in here.
Yeah, in the book there is a preface, so it sort of quickly discusses what I just mentioned, and then introduces the timeline. So I have put the timeline in the beginning of the book, so you can see the events that unfold proceeding to where the book commences. And it's a dark world that precedes Chronic Dreams. So, you could call it speculative fiction, right? Because that's exactly what it did. I took the the negatives that are occurring in the world today, and as I said, I funneled them through these causal variables and came out with these really extreme, violent events that really changes the world considerably. And I hope that doesn't happen. It's a dark, dark, dark world.
That's what one of the questions I was going to ask is yeah, with such heady ideas, if you thought that was kind of this is kind of a possible path that the we could take someday, like with kind of with this kind of history and with this kind of future.
Well, it is. I mean, I just got to state that. I mean, everything here is hypothetical, so um, it's not. Um, I don't want to presume that any of the bad things that I have put into the book are in anybody's intent in our in our reality in our timeline. But it does it consolidates things like globalist agendas, UN policies, all that are all causal variables that contribute to the dark world that or the dark history of cryonic dreams. Because cryonic dreams, you got to remember, is set more than a century from now, so it's in 2169. But it is, and it'll come out in the third part, the last part of the trilogy, how the history has all led to have come together and led to the present in cryonic dreams. Um, but it's a very dark dark history. or dark future for us, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what it was like creating kind of the mythology for these books? Like, because again, like, you did this history, but it's also kind of a mythology um, to everything and to kind of how everyone interacts.
Um, well, it was a lot of effort, and I'll be upfront, right? The story that I've written comes purely from my imagination, but the work on the website, right, is quite vast, and it would have taken me absolutely years to produce everything I've got there, and there's more to come. I'm going through. There'll be philosophic. There's a philosophical section coming in, and I've actually drafted some essays, philosophical essays, if you like, which support the story, and they quote elements of the book, but talk about today's philosophy and the things we should be trying to avoid in to avoid that future of cryonic dreams. Uh, but I did use AI to create some of that because there's just too much information. Uh, but I did go through a process of what it was. Uh, so I took the variables and and looked at each character and what part in those variables those characters play. Which is why, if you look on the website, you'll see in the canon and lore side of the website, there is very detailed information about all the characters, about the events, about the organizations in the past, in the yeah, that create the world. One of the dark um, organizations is called ACID, so it's Agency Against Spread of Infectious Diseases, and the Chronic Dreams is set in a period where there is the worst um, viral outbreak pandemic in human history, and it's the virus I call TMVID 48. So it's a transmutational viral infectious disease, and it occurs in 2148. But it is so pervasive, so lethal that it can mutate, or it mutates very quickly. So, which is why I call it transmutational. Um, it and it's almost impossible to stop. That's why it's been 2 decades, and they're still going through it. But that gives rise to this organisation, ACID, which is all about controlling the spread of the disease. But it's instead of looking at the cure, which is what it was set out at the beginning, it's now all about control, and it's got draconian measures in place and that sets the scene for the time period. But yeah, so that's all in there. So you can see that that all forms the universe that I've created, if you like. And there's more to come. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think it's fascinating how you're using the website and instead of just a here's who I am, buy my books, it is kind of like a companion to the books, like where there's
yes,
that you keep adding information.
yes,
And I assume is that your plan kind of with the second and third book is to keep adding more and more.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, so I've tried, there are spoilers in there, I must say. So if you haven't read the book, just be wary that there might be some spoilers. But I've tried to keep the canon and law restricted to what happens in the first part. Um, it's almost impossible given that the organizations and the variables inside the story all have a cause and effect. So you've got to discuss that as well. But I've tried to keep it to the first book, and I will release more as the second and third book comes out. Each I might add that each part will have its own timeline at the beginning. So the timeline that you see in the beginning of um, the first part sets out a lot of the events that create the history of chronic dreams. However, when I talk about in the second part, because it predominantly talks about Mars, it'll have a timeline that links all the events on Mars with some of the events that occur on Earth in the first part. So there are timelines that I'll release as well. So there'll be more information always coming as the books come out, are released.
That's wonderful. Uh, you have such kind of big scientific ideas in the series.
Yes.
How hard has it been to kind of take all of this really like kind of heavy lifting kind of stuff and to make it still fun and like for a fun read?
Um, it's you go when you start writing, you go in with an intent. You have an idea of what is going to happen in the scenes or the events that are going to happen, and how the characters react. So all in the background of that, you've got to think of the what's the science here, because we're talking about our future world, and you try and research what you think is needed for all those elements. But interestingly, um, and you've probably heard the saying, the story writes itself. So as you create the scene and insert the characters, and you start writing about how something affects the characters or an event affects the characters, the story actually changes as and your mind's got to keep up, because you thought, oh, I wasn't going to go in this direction, but hey, this is the flow, and it seems more logical, because when you're writing, you're actually putting yourself inside the characters as best you can. So, uh, so you just go with the flow to some degree. So, find that the technology. I always find that after I've written a scene, I might have to go back and do some more research to make sure that what I've written is makes sense.
Fantastic. Now, it makes sense. To just kind of get in? Can you tell me a little bit about the first book and kind of how it leads into the others?
Okay. How can I say this? Would you like me to just briefly talk about the characters themselves,
Sure,
or?
whatever makes the most sense for you. Which, because believe me, I understand. Like sometimes you're trying to. I'm asking you to to explain, the ocean, and it's like how do like so it's because I understand how big this is.
Well, I've made myself some notes as well, and if I can sort of bring in just sort of answer your question, but maybe make it a little bit relevant to the theme of your podcast, in terms of the horror element. So, uh, Chronic Dreams, I would say, merges science fiction with horror elements. It's not purely horror, because it talks about loss of identity and oppressive institutional manipulation and control. Um, the the organization like ACID that I was mentioning before, um, whose pervasive surveillance creates a chilling atmosphere of paranoia and dread, reflecting a world where scientific progress and authoritarian control dangerously overlap, right? Uh, so I'll just tell you a bit about. So Michelle is the Dr. Brown. She's the doctor that revives the Marianne, the patient. She's a pretty detached person. And she's focused on science, and she's got a terrible background. And if you read the book, you'll understand what I mean. Um, but she becomes a fiercely protective figure, and she protects her patient, who is the victim of sabotage as the story begins. And then there's also the AI, the hospital AI, who is a character in itself because she presents herself, her avatar is a 12-year-old girl. And she's always appears with Dr. Brown, and they're always interacting. So when the patient Marianne wakes up, she she has no memory. So with all this sabotage and other um, thriller type events happening in the background, all she wants to do is find out about her past and why all this is happening. So they do learn. They eventually find out things about her, and at one point it takes them out to a mansion that belongs to a relative of an old friend of hers. And I mean, this is all joins together in the book if you read it. But when they get to this mansion looking for the next clue, if you like, they're actually attacked. Now, can you see my background?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's uh, extreme outcome of the virus. So
Wow.
it's a human mutated um, creature, if you like, and what I call twilight, because normally the virus kills the patient, um, but in a small percentage of people, it goes through a transmutation and creates a creature like this. So there are a lot of these running around because when hospital systems collapse and they could keep up with the ill and dying, a lot of these people were out just in their homes and they mutated into these things. So they run around the countryside. So they actually attack the characters while they're at um, in this mansion, and there's a sequence where the mansion's security fails, and these things just explode into the mansion, which the characters, the main characters there's three of them. There's the patient Marianne, the Dr. Brown, and a fusion engineer called Jackson Robinson. But anyway, they're just sent um, scattered, sort of running away, trying to escape. And that's a very horrifying sort of section. But it opens up a lot of clues. From there, they find out what they were looking for. They go, which then leads them into the city where they need to go into the archives to find out a little bit more. And once they find that out, it really provides them the evidence that races towards the end of the book. It just brings the end of the book together. So there's all sorts of thriller, horror type elements in the book, which I hope uh, readers really enjoy.
Fantastic. Now, have you kind of let your mind wander a little and thought about what it would be like, or how, if someone were to adapt these, like, do you have any kind of thoughts about if you'd rather see kind of a movie or anything, any kind of adaptation about it?
Well, a few people that have already read it have said, "Oh, this would be a great movie." So If that were an opportunity, I would say yes, let's do it. And I know, um, I haven't had a lot of experience myself, but I do, and I have heard that people that become fans of the universe, yeah, they like to catch on to possible ideas and um, and create additional stories to for the universe. And now, if that were to happen, then sure, I'd be really keen to work with people to do that. Uh, One of the other things, the other reasons for creating the timeline that I've created is because I know I can go back into that any point in time in that timeline and create a set of stories that are relevant to that time period. And I mean, I've already had one idea because um, Marianne, the patient, you'll find out that she'd actually been to Mars as one of the first people that go to Mars, and I won't tell you much more than that. But on her return, her and her um, ex-boyfriend, if you like, who's quite well off, they actually joined forces to try and stop the main villain, if you like, from achieving some of the things that he does actually achieve in creating a darker world. So I'll leave it at that. But um, all I'm saying is that there's a whole set of stories there that you could actually work on, and that's something I could do in the future. But at this point, I'm just busy writing the three. And actually, I already started writing a fourth book, but it's another universe, and it'll be called Evil Under a Twilight Star. So I'm hoping that'll be have a bit more horror in it. So I might have to come back to your show.
Absolutely, I'd love it.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time. I wanted to ask, what do you hope readers take away from read after they read, Awakening?
Well, um, let me see. Um, Chronic Dreams I think it's more than just a thriller. It's a deeply human story that explores what it means to be alive, to have identity, um, and to resist in a world where technology can both save and control us. It it does blend high stakes scientific breakthroughs with intimate personal journeys, challenging the readers to reflect on things like identity, faith. You wouldn't think faith would be in there, but it is, and the ethical frontiers of our technologies. If you're if they're fascinated by stories like that, that combine cutting edge science with these profound philosophical questions, uh, and the emotional depth, then Chronic Dreams offers a unique and thought provoking experience that I hope will stay with the readers long after the last page.
Amazing. And last thing I wanted to ask you, how can folks keep up with you and with your books, and what's the best way to do that? Is it via your
Okay.
website, or do you use social media?
Yes. Yeah, via the website. I am on X and Facebook. I haven't quite got into the other social media um, options yet, but I am looking at that. But with the in my on my website, I will be releasing newsletters if people are interested, and also I do have a blog there which I will be talking about not just the um, what might be coming up, but also about the stories and elements of the stories. If I expand canon and lore, I will put it into the blog. So, yeah, there'll be a lot more information to come.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for making time for me today.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Absolutely. It took a minute because of the time difference, but this was an absolute pleasure. And I wish you all the best with your book. And I look forward to speaking to you in the future on your new ones.
Excellent. I will be in touch.
Absolutely. You take care, sir.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye. I want to thank John R. Carlos for a fascinating conversation about his Chronic Dreams trilogy, and specifically the first book, Awakening. You can get his books from Silversmith Press. The first one, Awakening, is out now, with When Mars Breaks scheduled for release in 2026, and the third book to be released in the next 3 years. The best way to keep track of when these books are, the second and third books are going to hit, or if you want to do a deep dive into the mythology or just kind of learn about John himself or anything else, the best way to do it is at his website, johnrcarlos.com.au. If you are a fan of speculative fiction and sci-fi, these sound like they're going to be great books for you. Really fascinating kind of dystopian world full of AI and cryostasis, and really kind of playing on a what if worst scenario of the world today. So it's really interesting, and I really do thank John for making time to be on the podcast. And if you want to find my stuff, me being Chris Ringler, the Spooky Chris, you can go to spookychris.com, and all of my podcasts, all of my books. Then I've written 26, so there's a few of them. My blogs, my 2 short films, my voluminous movie reviews. I review a lot of movies, are right there, and you can find all the other. I've done a lot of cool interviews and conversations with folks, and they are all on my website or on your favorite podcasting app. And I thank you again for taking some time to join me, and I will speak with you soon. Take care.